Hey everyone, Sanjay here. I wanted to make a quick video this morning on how to write a really good cold email. I'm seeing a lot of content in the space where people are saying that email does not work anymore because of AI. People's inboxes are completely shot. No one's going to open your email, let alone respond to it. I just want to clear the air and say that is not the case. I'm still generating meaningful responses and interactions and meetings via email, both for my personal business as well as for my tech sales role. So I wanted to make this video as a way to kind of walk through my framework to writing a good email, how a single email kind of fits into an overall outbound campaign. And hopefully coming out of this video, you'll have a good understanding of like how to leverage email to either get in touch with your ideal customers or to generate pipeline and set meetings or even nurture and move deals along. Without further ado, let's dive into the video today. So for me, I have two primary use cases for emails today. The first one, which is kind of like the bread and butter, which is, there's strangers out there in the ether that can buy my product or service. In order for me to get in touch with them, either to get their responses on if they're interested or not, or to get a sales meeting on the calendar, I send them an email to make sure that they know who I am, what I offer, and how I can add value to their lives. So that's like first, kind of use case for me, which is, just cold prospecting, getting meetings, getting pipeline via emails. Now, the second use case, which is actually very kind of low-hanging fruit, is whenever you do interact with someone and they might not be ready to buy, right? They're a little bit higher up the funnel, right? They might be problem aware or completely unaware of the problems that they're having as they continue to scale or do whatever they're doing. For them, you want to have like a nurture campaign where if they're like, hey, this sounds interesting, but right now we're focused on something else. You want to get them into a nurture campaign so that every month you send them an email or every quarter you send them an email, just so that you stay top of mind for them. So when they do have the problem that you solve for, they know who you are and they know who to reach out to in order to get a solution. So those are the two primary use cases for me. One is cold prospecting, and then the second one is nurturing people that just they're almost too high up the funnel to be able to take a meeting with you. All right, so let's dive into kind of my framework for writing a really good cold sales email. It's a 4-step process, and at the end of this, we'll actually dive into a couple example emails I've written and some of the results I've got using this process in the real world. The first thing I want to say before we dive into it is my thought process and kind of the why behind this process is to have a single cohesive thought or idea throughout an email with a clear call to action at the end. Now, a lot of really bad sales emails, they're all over the place. They, go into someone's inbox and kind of show up and throw up, where they have a lot of different ideas. They might come in and say like, hey, Sanjay, we'll save you a ton of money. We'll save you a ton of time. Are you interested? Do you want to book time? And if you think about from a reader's perspective that has never heard your name or your company's name, that is a lot of cognitive overhead for them to be able to figure out what are you selling? Why does it matter to me? And then what do you want me to do with this email, right? So my framework is really designed, and it's not revolutionary, is designed to reduce that burden and have a very clear kind of call to action for the prospect. So the first step of writing an email is an observation on the person. So why are you reaching out to this individual in particular? Now for sales, right? Sales is one-to-one. And so you have to understand hey, what is it about this person's role or background or position at the company that is making you reach out to them, and why are you reaching out to them now? So the first piece of writing a really good email is to make sure that you personalize it to the person. So all my emails start with hi, XYZ, I noticed that you're doing this, or, this is the reason I'm reaching out to you. Now, the second piece of writing a really good email is an observation around maybe a problem that they might be encountering in their business. So for example, right, I had a service that was really focused on driving lead generation for open source startups. So an observation could be, hey, XYZ company, I noticed that you just recently raised money. You might be having a challenge with hiring a sales team internally, right? So this is something that, hey, I observed that you raised money. Usually companies that raise money have a challenge of quickly hiring sales reps. So this is an observation of a challenge they might be encountering today. Now, the third thing to drop in your email is some sort of social proof. Now, there's 3 types of social proofs that I usually use on a day-to-day basis. The first one is industry social proof. So using the example I used in the past on open source companies, let's say, I was consulting and, I drove some really good outcomes for an open source startup. If I go and email a CEO at another open source company, I might tell them hey, I worked with XYZ company. They had a similar challenge to you. we were able to drive, more business for, their enterprise sales team, right? So that social proof is like industry specific. Taking it out of software, right? You could even say, like, let's say you're working with plumbers. You could say like, hey, I saw that you're, a plumber in this area. We worked with a couple other plumbers in the local area to drive more leads for them month over month, right? So that is like, hey, I work and I partner with people in your industry and solve similar challenges in that industry. So that's one kind of social proof. The second one is based on the challenge that you observed in the email. So let's say the challenge is like, hey, we're struggling with generating leads, right? Or hiring sales reps. You could say like, hey, I saw that you're a marketing startup and you recently raised money and you're probably struggling hiring sales reps. We worked with other, startups in the open source space that also were struggling with hiring, sales reps quickly. This is how we were able to kind of shorten the hiring cycles and onboarding time to make those sales teams more efficient faster, right? Like that's another social proof. That's more challenge specific. So the observation you found in the email, you figure out like, hey, have you solved that challenge in the past? And this is the solution. And this was the outcome once they implemented your product or service. So that's the second nugget. The third thing is if you don't have any prior experience like delivering results, the best thing you can do here is just give a good TLDR hypothesis on how your service or product can add value and solve the problem that you identified in the email. So going back to the example, like let's say you've never done any sort of lead generation for businesses in the past, but what you could say is like, hey, I noticed that you have some really good traction in your business. You might be struggling to generate more leads consistently. We provide a service that is, scales with your business, and you only pay for whenever we set like sales meetings. And what that'll allow you to do is kind of give a quick hypothesis on how the challenge that you identified, your service or product solves that challenge. So that's the other angle. If you have no social proof, is just to give a quick hypothesis on how your product or service can solve a challenge that they might be running into. Now, the last piece of a really good email is just a clear, concise call to action, right? Like what I see really bad emails have is they have questions throughout the email, and then they also have a call to action to book time or, have a sales meeting. So what you want to do is either pick one or the other. You either want to have the email end with a question of like, hey, is this something that you're focused on solving, right? Just ask the question, try to get a conversation started. Or if you feel like, hey, this is something that you can really start and they're a little bit warmer, you might go straight for the meeting and say like, hey, I think we should book time and discuss how we can potentially partner on solving this. What you don't want to do is mix and match these call to actions and the reader becomes confused on like what it is they need to do. You want to pick one clear call to action. My recommendation is if you're going after cold traffic, actually just ask questions without getting a meeting. It's a lot less of a ask of someone who's never heard of you or your company to just respond to an email versus scheduling 30 minutes on your calendar. Let's look at some real world emails I've written and sent using this framework and some of the results that I've seen. So here's a really good example. Now, just to kind of set the scene on kind of the thesis behind this email campaign. So this is for AccuSales, which is a sales agency that I own, and I was selling lead generation services to different startups. And so for this particular campaign, I was selling lead generation services to sales leaders within open source startups. And the reason I did open source is I just have a lot of experience in that space. And so I figured I could add a lot of value here. So I've had to blur out all the kind of person identifiable information for confidentiality reasons. But essentially, if you look at this email, right, the first line hits both our 2 bullet points on the framework, which is like, hi, XYZ, I came across, you through this community. This is why I was, reaching out to this person in particular. I noticed you're not hiring for sales roles. So this is an observation of the current state of their business, right? So this is some, kind of in a very short time frame, I hit like points 1 and 2, which is why I reach out to this person, and then an observation or assumption on their current state. Now for the social proof nugget, I did have some experience really working with open source startups. And so the social proof here is like, hey, I'm the founder of AccuSales. We're assisting open source companies turn their open source users into paid customers. We're performance-based, pay us only when the deal closes, right? So that's a quick summary of like, the value we provide to this industry. and then just a quick overview of our services. Now, notice all of this is like in 4 sentences, right? So you want to keep these emails super concise. And then the call to action, I talked about, call to action being either ask for a meeting or ask for a response. And so here was to ask for a response, which is, are you running into issues finding and converting, users into customers? And I've blurred out the users and customers because it calls out the product itself. But this is a way for them to get someone to respond. Now, if you actually look at this and how it fits into the campaign, I didn't get a reply to this email, but I sent a follow-up email saying like, hey, XYZ, is this something you're open to exploring? We're looking to partner with 2 companies, as a way to kind of add a little bit of scarcity to this email. And so this actually ended up being one of our clients. So we did end up closing a deal with this company, and they became a client of ours at AccuSales. Here's another email from the exact same campaign, and it follows the similar framework that I walked through, which is like, hi, XYZ, notice the awesome community that your company has. I saw that you lead sales in North America and likely not hiring to maintain efficient growth in this market. So that's points 1 and 2 right there in the first 2 sentences of the email. And then, it goes back to the social proof, which is, I'm the founder of AccuSales. We're assisting open source startups, turn their open source users into paid customers. And then a call to action, like, understand you're likely working most of the deals today. Have you considered having an on-demand ADR partner to supplement pipeline to stay ahead of plan? So there's a call to action. That's a question to elicit a response. And then I actually got a response to this initial email. Actually, I got it like right away within, I think about 20 minutes of sending it. And it says, hi, Sanjay, do you have additional info about your process in working with a client? So we ended up actually having this meeting. We ended up closing the deal just because we didn't align on pricing. But this was a good kind of intro meeting that was set over a single email. Now, the last email I want to show you is from the same campaign, similar framework, right? It says, hi, XYZ, notice you lead account development at company, and you all have an awesome community. I understand you're interviewing, hiring, and training the ADR team. So this is, why I'm reaching out to this person. They lead account development, and then an observation of their current state. And then here's the social proof. We're assisting open source companies. For our clients, we find, new deals for their EAEs to close. Understand you're brought in to build out an in-house ADR team. Have you considered having an on-demand partner to supplement to stay ahead of plan? Same call to action, trying to keep it very conversational, trying to elicit a response versus going for the meeting in that first email. And then I ended up getting a response actually right away. I got a response in almost a minute actually. And then it said, hey, not at this time, Sanjay. I don't foresee us ever going down this path, but we'll let you know if we do. Now, we didn't get a positive response, but in my understanding is even getting a no and understanding from them helps me better prioritize my time, because now I know that hey, this company is not looking at, ADR partnerships or lead generation services. So this isn't an account for me to spend a whole lot of time, reaching out to other people to try to sell into. So, trying to get a no from a leader like this is almost as valuable as getting a yes, so that you know where to spend your time. Awesome, y'all. So that's the video for today. Hopefully it was super valuable. If you have any questions around how I do lead generation and generate pipeline for my business or for my job, I'm going to leave a link to my calendar below. Feel free to book time with me if you're running into issues on kind of generating pipeline for your business or for your sales job. Happy to help however I can. But outside that, I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to y'all soon. See ya.